On the Blaze today, there is a front page story about the Republicans in the House that are already caving. They're already saying it's time to end this government shutdown because it's too taxing. Time to end the government shutdown? What are you talking about? It's too what? How has this been hard for anybody? How has this been hard for anybody? It's an amazing story about the weasels in Washington on the GOP side, but nothing like the story that is coming from Politico and the continuing story that will be on the Blaze very soon about John Boehner. This is officially my snapping point. I have had it with John Boehner. I have thought he was not a good guy for a very long time, not on our side. We all know that. I don't have this story in front of me. Joel took my copy of it, Stu, so if you have another copy of it, you can bring it in for me. Or if you can just give me the quotes. Just give me the quotes from it as we get into it. He's not a good guy, and we've all known that. But there's a difference between not a good guy, right? Not on your side, and somebody who's knifing you in the back. I want to make it very, very clear. John Boehner is knifing you in the back, and there's no two ways about it. This is coming from his chief of staff. And if John Boehner actually can convince anybody in today's day and age that he did not know about this letter, he had no idea. You are an imbecile. And you may be making a case for Margaret Sanger saying that some people just shouldn't breed. Because you're an imbecile. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so here's the story that we gave you last hour, but there's more that we're going to add to this. Yesterday, the Democrats leaked an embarrassing email or two showing how the Republican House Speaker John Boehner hid his efforts to protect the long-standing health care subsidies for members of Congress and their staffs. Now, remember, there's no way for a Republican to get away with saying, hey, I know you have to join Obamacare, but we're not going to. I mean, that was one of the things. Make Congress abide by their own laws. Make them feel the pain that they have inflicted on all of us in every shape and form. Make them abide by the same laws. NBC actually ran a story yesterday, and I read it on the air on the TV show last night, and it's just outrageous. This is how out of touch the press is and the people of Congress. Basically, in a nutshell, the tweet was, Congress is now missing all of those people that they see every day, but are now being shut out because of the government shutdown. And the example they used were the people that push the buttons in the elevators for the Senate and House members.
Yeah, in the doorman.
Excuse me?
The federal doorman and the federal elevator operators.
These guys are so out of touch, and NBC is right there with them, that they think we should have sympathy for the people who are not coming to work today on your tax dollars that push the buttons for the House members and the Senate members. If you can't figure out how to push a button and what floor you should be on, Senator, by yourself, if you really think that you should be spending money to have somebody push an elevator button for you on taxpayer dollars, you, Senator, are also making a case for Margaret Sanger and eugenics. You're too stupid to go to Washington. So, I'm sorry, I just want to use their own progressive language back at them. And they're heroes. So, here is the letter. He writes, or his chief of staff writes to Harry Reid about how they have to get in to see the president to save the congressional subsidies. They need to see the president and do some backroom, off-the-record deal. John Boehner's chief of staff writes, we can't let it get out there that this is for Boehner and Reid to ask the president to carve out the requirement of Obamacare. Got it? We can't let it get out. We have to find some way to get them to the president. Quoting, I am even okay if the president is hauling us down to talk about the next steps on immigration. I really don't care what we say it's about. It just can't be about what we know it's about. End quote. Hashtag, added by Glenn, hashtag defund the GOP. These people are lying thieves.
And the next part is even worse. The part that you didn't get to yet, where several sources in attendance at a meeting in mid-July with Boehner report that he wondered aloud at one point in the meeting whether they could quietly slip some language into the bill to end the problem without it receiving any public attention at all. He said, when I was in the state legislature, we used to stick things in bills and no one would notice. So he wanted to just slip something in there without anybody knowing and without any a congressional rigmarole, without voting on it, without doing the proper steps along the way and getting the American people involved in the process. And apparently even his aide said, no, we can't do that. People will notice. We can't do that.
I am Tea Parties. They have said that you are just a GOP shill. They also say that you are nothing but anarchists. I tell you now, I am neither of those. I am for hope and change. I am for transparency. I am for somebody saying what they actually mean. I'm saying I am for somebody going to Washington and fighting against this system in their own party and across the aisle and linking arms with anyone on any side that wants the same. If you happen to believe in healthcare, but you believe in let's have an open debate, and yes, these exchanges are going to collapse this system, but a single-payer system is better. And you'll say that out loud? Good. I'll link arms with you. I'd rather have the argument. Let's have the actual argument. Enough of this kabuki theater. These people are beyond reprehensible. No business would ever get away with this. None. No business. The president actually had the gall, the unmitigated gall, to compare the glitches yesterday to Apple. I'm sorry, Mr. President, but Apple has actually come out with a few good items. And Apple would never allow a product to be launched that wasn't ready. If their internal studies were showing, Steve, this operating system is a nightmare. It won't work. It's not ready. Do you think Steve Jobs would have said, put it out there anyway? He would have said delay. So if you really want to have the argument that the, quote, glitches, that your propaganda arm of NBC, the one that has said that they are going to do a week on Obamacare to make sure that everybody knows how good it is, they are doing a week of propaganda. Even those reporters give up on air and saying, this is a nightmare. If you want to compare yourself to, let's compare apples to apples. If you really are saying that you are just like Apple, sir, then why don't you start acting like Apple and delay the release of your new version until it's stable, until it would actually work? Because you have no credibility. Apple has credibility. Apple is like, okay, everything that comes out of Apple is amazing. Nobody believes that about the federal government. But even if we did this particular product that you're releasing is not ready.
Yeah.
And so would he defund it? Well, Steve Jobs would have. He would say it doesn't work. It's not better. But let's just say Steve Jobs would say, yes, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. Would he release it with all of the flaws and glitches? Or would he say, everybody on my team says it's not ready to go. We're going to delay. If you want to compare apples to apples, sir, then let's do it. You are the worst CEO known to mankind. You have no idea how the free market system works. You're a socialist. There's nothing wrong with that, Mr. President. That's not name-calling. That is accuracy. Name-calling is something that you understand very well because you not only apply the tactics of Saul Alinsky, you taught the tactics of Saul Alinsky. So don't pretend that you don't know who he is either. You want to compare apples to apples? Good, do it. That's the president's side. Now let's go back to John Boehner and the GOP. John Boehner and the GOP, they are nothing but lies. They try to pretend that they are you. Let me ask the Republicans, are you as dumb as the Democrats have been? Because the Democrats allowed the progressives to take over their party. And I know a lot of Democrats, and all these Democrats that I know that are good, decent people, they just cannot get their arms around that the president really has a complete life system. That the president really wants a single-party payer system. They can't get their arms around that he is not a friend of Israel. They still believe all of this crap. Even though the evidence is all there. It's all there. Okay, fine. That's the Democrats. Republicans, the evidence is here. John Boehner is a lying thief. He is trying to portray himself as something he is not. You now have the evidence of his chief of staff in bed with Harry Reid saying, can't we bury this? Can't we just make this happen? Can't we just keep the subsidies for us while we pretend to fight against them? So now it's up to you. You have the information. John Boehner, I guarantee you, John Boehner would step down today, if the big donors would actually come to the plate today and say, I've given my last dime to the Republican Party. Till John Boehner steps down, not as Speaker of the House, steps down, resigns. Until that happens, you don't get a dime from me. Not one dime from me. If everybody who's ever given any money would call their congressman and call GOP headquarters and say, don't you take me, I want you to take my name off your roll. I want to remove my name from the rolls of the GOP. Don't you ever ask me for a dime. Don't you ever send me an email. Don't you do it. If you can't get that man on this evidence to resign, you're worthless. Worthless. There's step one. Hashtag defund the GOP. Otherwise, I can tell you your future. I'm pretty good at predicting the future. I'm pretty good at seeing the trends. If you don't come off of this road now, you are going to have a GOP that is just like the Democrats. And you will continue to get the choices. Your choice will be Chris Christie. And that choice will then be Chris Christie or Hillary Clinton. Which one do you want? Which one do you want? I don't want either of them. That's who your choice is going to be. You want a real choice? Good. You right now, you can have that. If everybody got on the phone, if everybody called John Boehner, if everybody called their representative and said, I'm done with you. You know what? You're a good representative, but unless you can convince him, I'm not giving you, you're going to have to step out and be a part of another party because I won't give you another dime either. I won't give any of you another dime. The GOP will not have another dime because when you give money to the GOP, all of these congressmen have to go out and they have to raise money, and they have to raise a certain amount of money for the GOP so they can get their people elected. And so when you give to your congressman, it first goes to the GOP and then they decide. And who decides? Well, in the Senate, it's John Cornyn. So John Cornyn is the guy who decides who gets all the money. Well, I don't like John Cornyn. Louis Gohmert's going to be on in about an hour from now. I'm going to beg him to run against John Cornyn. I don't want any of my money going to John Cornyn. Not a dime of it going to John Cornyn. I don't want John Cornyn deciding who it is that gets the money. Not interested. All of us are stewards of our money. I just met some of the best stewards of money I've ever met in my life. I met somebody who runs a gigantic corporation. Gigantic corporation. It's the best corporation I've ever seen. There's not a scrap of waste. They have dedicated all of their dollars to God. They are building their company because they feel like they're supposed to. They treat their customers right. They do it's an amazing company. I'll tell you about it sometime. I want to do a documentary, but I'm not going to tell you about it now. It's a company that you know. And I toured their facility, their manufacturing facility, and I was ashamed. They've been in my facility. I was ashamed of the way I do business. I was ashamed of my facility. These are the best stewards of money I've ever met in my life. You're a steward of your money. You're supposed to do the right thing. Do you really believe giving your money to the GOP and to John Cornyn and to John Boehner to have them decide who's going to protect the Republican freedom? Do you really think? I ask you to pray on it. Do you really think that that's the way to go? Because these guys are knifing the Republic in the back. Not a dime from me. Hashtag defund the GOP.